coming to help you next Sunday. His name is Norm McCoy. You ever heard of that name? He's not coming to preach. He's not really coming to play or do anything like that. But what he is coming to do is to do a special service for us on the 29th. What he's going to do is we put together some of the old Christmas carols that some of you may have not heard, a little story that goes along with them, but we're going to make it kind of a little fun event. And we are in need of 6 readers. We happen to have scripts here today, and we're going to take an opportunity when you sign up. You can pick up your script and have it for next Sunday. You can just come. It'll be on the wall too, but you can just enjoy it, speak the words that come. But I'll tell you some great stories about how some of these Christmas carols, some we've never done before, but that you know, and put a little bit of history to them. We're going to have kind of a good time with that. He's also going to talk a little bit about what happened to Jesus after he was born until he got to be 12 years old. Sometimes it's lost for us. It's hidden time. But a lot of things went on in Jesus' life, and Mary's life, and Joseph's life. We're going to talk a little bit about that, intermix it with the carols and the songs that we're doing. So we're going to pass around a clipboard. If you'd like to take one of the scripts, just put down a reader part. One has only one part, have them have double, but just put your name by that and make sure that you pick up a script from me, I guess, after service. I'll have copies of those up here in front. You can grab one and take it with you and take a look at it and have it all put together. So thank you in advance for doing that. Pass it around. If it's not filled, let me know at the end of my service, and we'll just go into a time of prayer and pass it again, okay? So whatever we need to put that together. That story. So what is Christmas all about, says Charlie Brown. You remember that? It was really interesting. Y'all know Peanuts, you know? I mean, and all that kind of thing that went on, and Linus and Lucy and all the other folks that were part of that characteristic. You know, at one time, Charlie Brown was a great piece. It was back in 1965 that Charlie Brown kind of got rolling. He was rolling in 1950, 1951. That's when Charlie Brown kind of came on the scene. And he got more and more interest among kids and everything else, you know, and they began to associate that with Christmas and everything else. The only challenge was back in 1965 when this whole thing came around, the world was at a point, that was like 50 years ago, wasn't it? Can't believe that. This was the world was having a little bit of thing called commercialism, you know. This is pre-Coca-Cola telling you that if you buy a Coke and drink it, you'll save the world and peace will come to the rest of the, you know, I mean, all that kind of stuff that went out in the commercialism, and people were beginning to struggle with that a little bit. Times were changing, things were different, and so they came to, of all things, to CBS and then to Mr. Schultz and said to him, could you produce for us a Charlie Brown Christmas? And he said, sure, no problem. I'll be glad to put that together. And one of the things that he thought about was when his own kids asked him the question, but Dad, what is Christmas really about? And he had the opportunity to really try to come up with an answer of what Christmas is and put it together. This gave him an opportunity to speak through Charlie Brown and Lucy and Linus and all the others in order to speak to the world and say it. It was really one of the first Christmas specials. I mean, we had Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, Burl Ives. We had all that kind of stuff, singing and everything else. But this was an opportunity for these the main characters to actually bring it to life. What is Christmas really all about? And so when he was creatively putting things together, one of the things he said, I want to put something together that is a little bit, and they looked at all the characters and he said, you know what, I think what we're going to do is we're going to read a scripture passage. In fact, we're going to read a scripture passage of what the angel said to the world and still says to the world, which is a perfect answer to what is Christmas all about. And he begins to put this wonderful word together about what the angels first proclaimed. Well, the only problem was he ran into trouble. Because people said, even back in 1965, this is a separation of church and state. You cannot have somebody read scripture on primetime television. And Coca-Cola came and said, if you do that, we will not sponsor your program. Because we're just trying to say to you, we're in a completely different world, a completely different situation, and we're not going to make that sponsorship. And so Mr. Schultz was under lots of pressure. CBS stuck with him, but they said, we just want you to know this can be the most tremendous flop in the world when you put this special out. And he said, no, that's what I want to do. In fact, what you discovered was that it's still played today. CBS still owns the rights to it. They still put it on. And becomes almost where Mr. Schultz was one of the great preachers of the time, because he preached to all those kids who preached a message and a lesson to the entire world. I love to watch it, but I went back and looked at it again. And I tell you, I can't believe it's almost timeless. And it speaks to today. It speaks about the reality of the world that suddenly says, in the midst of commercialism and everything else going on in the world, how do how do we actually put something together that actually means something, that actually says something? How do we find the joy in Christmas without all the stress and all the other issues that are going on within our life itself? The challenge is that what does that look like? And so, of all things, he chooses the character Linus. Y'all remember Linus? Oh, Linus. Remember, he was almost silent most of the time, drug around that blankie with him, the whole thing. And you remember they tried to take it away from him. Lucy kept saying, get rid of the blanket. You've got to be in a Christmas program and you got to be a shepherd. Get rid of the blanket. People will laugh at you if you go out and say that thing on your head. So what does he do? He takes a blanket, he throws it on his head, and puts a little thing on it. He goes, look, see, it works in all situations, all circumstances. He drug it around for years, and you know what? It never got dirty. He drug it around and never got wet. I mean, that's who he was. But what Schultz said was he wanted a unique character. He wanted a character that was almost silent, ridicule, all that kind of stuff, carried a blanket, like he really knew this thing, but a person who was a great philosopher. And every time that Linus speaks, Linus says something important, like in the Great Pumpkin piece. He talks about, what is most important. And this little quiet guy with a pacifier in his mouth pulls the passy out and begins to try to answer a question to Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown's out there screaming, what is Christmas all about? The reason was because he was depressed. He was having a terrible time. So what does he do? He goes to a psychiatrist for 5 cents, to Lucy. He goes, what should I do with my depression? She goes, you're depressed. Well, what should I do with it? You need to be the director of the Christmas pageant at the school. What? Yes, you need to be the one who directs us and put us all together and everything. Charlie Brown said, but I only want to ask the question, what is Christmas all about? You need to be the director. Maybe you'll find out what's going on. It'll cheer you up, get your joy coming. You remember? And so what do? They put him in charge of directing it, and he's having a terrible time, and all of a sudden they said, go out and buy a Christmas tree. So he goes out to the Christmas tree lot, you remember? And of all things, he's dragging Linus with him with that blanket. They go out there and start looking at Christmas trees. And what's so cool is they're out and they walk up to the Christmas tree and they hit it, and they're all aluminum. Every Christmas tree is aluminum. Y'all remember aluminum Christmas trees? Some of you may remember. Some remember because you got shocked when you grabbed onto it with a bad string of lights. But aluminum, if you have them, they're worth a fortune now. But at one time, we supplemented everything to the beauty and the modernistic concept of aluminum Christmas trees with a little light that turned in colors and everything else that went on. Oh, man, I tell you, we didn't even want to make it look like Christmas. We wanted aluminum. If you put it in your front window, people go, they're cool people. They're right up there. And here we are trying to tell the story of Christmas, and the challenge is that it was and Charlie, is this what the world is supposed to be? I mean, seriously, is this what Christmas is an aluminum tree? And finally he sees this little scrubby tree, you remember? And they called it a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, this little thing is hanging like this, and all of a sudden he takes that, and they go, and Linus says, don't you take that back there, Charlie. Lucy and everybody else are going to laugh at you. They're going to say, what did you get this for? Get one of the aluminum trees. No, he said, I'm taking this because this is really what Christmas is. And he takes out an ornament, he hangs it on the tree, and when he hangs it on the tree, the thing loops over. I mean, it even looks worse than when he started out the process. Like, what does he do with this? What does he do with this? And he goes back and he shows it to him, and everybody laughs at him. Ha, 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 ha. And then finally they just stopped laughing and they turned their back and walked away from him. And he's standing there all by himself, and he looks of all things at Linus and he says, what is the meaning of Christmas? What is it all about? And Linus looks at him, pops out that passy and says, I can tell you. And you remember that wonderful moment he goes back on the stage, complete with his blanket. He starts to give out this little soliloquy. And he quotes Scripture. And he speaks the word. It is said that some people heard that word for the very first time. For some people, it was just words. For other people, it meant something important for them to know that Christ had come, was born, and present in their life. It was the most beautiful, poetic moment. It's a world that bridged for us the reality of a world that did not know and a world that did know, and they came together in a wonderful opportunity to share in that particular story. Mr. Schultz said it was one of the most important things he ever created. It's one of the things that we show together today. Why? Because it speaks to us about what Christmas is really all about. The opportunity for us to rediscover once again, in the midst of all the tinsel and all the world and the brightness, of really what Christmas is and the beauty of Christmas itself. I'm going to remind you of the picture, remind you of the video. It goes like this.
What a treat!
Was when all of a sudden our dear friend Linus gets up there and he says, fear not. Did you notice what happened? He dropped his blankie. It's the first time. And Schultz said that when he read it, he wanted to make sure people understood that when you fear, you don't need your security blanket. That's what he was talking about. He was preaching in that. And he said, and you watch it, and Linus drops that little blanket. He picks it up at the end, but he drops it when he says, fear not. And he drops it down, and away it goes. You know, I think Christmas is an opportunity for us to really celebrate who we are and what we do. So Christmas Eve service, we're going to do something a little different this year. We're going to have the kids dress up in their costumes and that kind of stuff. But then we're going to invite everybody who's here to join us in a little bit of a fun pageant. Rather than just watching kids do it, we want you as adults to do it too. So we're going to do a little rehearsal in pre-Christmas Eve service fashion. So what I want you to do today, I want to divide you up into 4 groups, okay? Group number 1, raise your hand. Okay, very good. Group number 1, raise your hand so I see you, okay? Very good. Group number 2, raise your hand. And group number 3, raise your hand. You can be in that group if you want to. And I mean, you know. Group number 3, raise your hand. And then group number 4, raise your hand. Okay, very good. Now, we're going to go through this. This is what's going to happen. Now, we want to move this along because we don't want to take much time in this whole thing. So here's what I want to do. I want those of you who are group number 1, hold your hands up. You all know who you are. Okay, very good. Now, you got to work on this, okay? And every time in this thing, when we say shepherd, you're going to go, yo, sheep. Thank you. I heard that in one voice back there. We're going to try that one more time, okay? Okay, ready for everybody? When I say the word shepherd? Yo, sheep. Very good. And if I say the word sheep, what are you going to do? And if I say something about night, what are you going to sing? Silent night. Now, run that about 10 times faster, okay? There we go. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Thank you very much. Now, for group number 2, when I come to the part where I say anything about angel, what are you going to do? Very good. Now, we're going to sing it only about 10 times as fast as we need to do that, okay? You get the idea. Okay, here we go. Ready? Angel. There's a scripture that says, make a joyful noise unto